The dog that found the crying star. The wind rolled over the hills like a ghost dragging its fingers through the trees. In the sleepy town of Hillridge, barely a dot on the state map, most windows were still dark. Streetlights flickered on and off. Pipes groaned. And somewhere out behind Miller's junkyard, a ragged German shepherd named Luma snapped awake from a dreamless sleep. Her ears twitched. Something was off. Not danger, not food, not even the scent of arrival. This was something deeper, a vibration in the marrow, a sound almost imperceptible, a whimper in the cold. Luma stretched, her coat patchy and thin, but her muscles taut. A survivor's body. She had once belonged to a family with a porch and a little girl who tied ribbons around her neck. That life had vanished 2 winters ago, swallowed by foreclosure, relocation, and abandonment. She'd given birth to 4 pups behind a collapsed shed the previous spring. Only one had survived, and even he had wandered off as the leaves turned. But this night was different. She stepped over broken glass, hopped a chain-link fence, and padded into the freezing dark, guided only by instinct. The fog clung low to the ground like breath on cold steel. And then she heard it again. A cry. Not a coyote, not a kitten, not even a pup. It was human. The infant had been left in the ditch like a discarded glove. Wrapped hastily in a hospital-grade blanket, his skin was raw and blotched, his fists clenched in rage at a world he didn't understand. There was no note, no formula, no second thoughts. The baby wailed. Luma crept closer, circling, her breath puffing in little clouds. Her nose twitched. Milk. Blood. A faint chemical trace of antiseptic. Someone had given birth recently, somewhere nearby. The child was turning purple. Instinct surged. Maternal heat flooded her chest. She couldn't nurse him. She couldn't speak. But she could do the one thing no human had done for him so far. She lay down. Tucking her body around the fragile, squirming bundle, Luma pressed her chest against the boy and let her breath warm his skin. She licked his temple gently, nudging the blanket back over him with her nose. And there, in a ditch beside a desolate stretch of road, under a sky beginning to turn gray with morning, the stray became a sentinel. Maria Alvarez didn't expect to find anything unusual that morning. She'd been working with the local wildlife service on tracking coyotes after a few chickens had vanished from the Benson farm. But the prints were all wrong. One set of dog tracks. Not a pack. No scattering. No sign of struggle. Just a looping, circling path. Tight, deliberate. She crouched beside the ditch and brushed away some leaves. Then she saw them. Shoe prints. Tiny. Soft-soled. Infant. Maria's throat tightened. She unhooked her radio but hesitated. A faint sound reached her ears, like someone squeezing a squeaky toy underwater. A cry. She took off running, and there in the ditch, she stopped cold. A dog lay protectively around a newborn baby, its body trembling but still, its eyes locked on hers, not pleading, not warning, waiting. The EMTs almost had to sedate Luma to get her into the vehicle. She refused to leave Noel's side. Even as the baby's temperature stabilized inside the incubator, the dog paced, pawed, and howled. Maria rode in the ambulance, gripping the rail with white knuckles. She couldn't tear her eyes away from them. "It's a miracle," the driver whispered. "No," Maria replied. "It's a mother." At Hillridge General, doctors swarmed the baby. He was premature, frost-bitten in places, dehydrated, but alive. Against every statistical prediction, he had made it through the night. Thanks to her. Maria sat beside Luma in the waiting room for hours. When a nurse finally walked in holding the baby, bundled now in warm, soft blankets, Luma stood. The baby stopped crying the moment she saw her. The town exploded with news. Maria didn't have a say in it. Reporters were already parked outside her apartment by nightfall. Miracle moment. Stray dog saves abandoned baby. Guardian angel with fur. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, but to Maria it was something deeper than a headline. She hadn't stopped thinking about the moment she saw the pair of them. One born that night, the other reborn in that moment. 2 lost souls who had found each other in a place meant for dying. The nurses started calling the baby Noel, given the timing. just 5 days before Christmas. Maria signed the paperwork to foster him temporarily. She knew it wouldn't be permanent, but something told her this wasn't a temporary story. 3 weeks had passed since that morning in the ditch. Maria's apartment was a chaos of cribs, borrowed blankets, donated formula, and one fiercely loyal German shepherd who refused to sleep more than 2 feet away from the baby. But peace was never built to last. There was a knock. "Ms. Alvarez, I'm with Child Protective Services." Maria already knew what was coming. Her stomach clenched. "We appreciate everything you've done, but the child must be placed in formal care until we locate his biological parents." Luma barked once, low and sharp. Maria stood taller. "He's safe here." The woman gave a practiced sigh. "There's no legal precedent for a dog acting as guardian." Maria didn't blink. "Then maybe it's time we create one." Hillridge wasn't used to headlines, or legal battles, or protests. But now the diner had a poster. "Let Luma keep her pup." The post office put out donation jars. Someone made t-shirts. Reporters camped out like crows on the courthouse steps. Still, not everyone was supportive. One woman on the school board called the situation absurd, scoffing at the idea that a dog should influence legal custody. "She didn't just warm the baby," Maria fired back during a community meeting. "She chose him." An old man from the back of the room raised a shaking finger. "That mutt showed more humanity than half the people I know." The room went silent. It was a social worker who brought the news. "We found a possible DNA match," she told Maria, "a woman named Rachel Devlin." Rachel had disappeared 2 days before the baby was found. A nurse from the city, struggled with addiction, rumored to be pregnant. They found her body in an abandoned trailer 2 counties over. Suicide, pills and a bottle of gin, burned baby clothes in the corner, a charred crib. Maria wept alone that night, Luma beside her. The horror of it all lingered like smoke in the lungs. The woman who gave birth to Noel had believed the world couldn't hold him safely, but Luma had. The hearing was set. A small county courtroom became the center of a national media storm. "Your Honor," the attorney for the state began, "we are not here to deny Miss Alvarez's compassion or the bravery of an animal, but law is built on precedent, and no precedent gives a dog guardianship rights." Maria stood. This wasn't just instinct. If it were, Luma could have left, could have attacked, could have taken shelter on her own. She didn't. She stayed. She chose. She looked over at Luma, calm and regal on the courthouse bench beside Noel, who reached out and patted her head like it was the most natural thing in the world. The room was quiet. The judge rubbed his eyes. "I have to admit, I never thought I'd hear a custody case where the key witness is a canine." Everyone laughed, but no one disagreed. Despite Rachel's death and the confirmation that she was the mother, legal complications lingered. Her family, estranged and bitter, attempted to gain custody, citing biological rights. They had never met the child, never even known of his birth. And when shown a photograph of Luma curled around the baby in the ditch, Rachel's sister burst into tears. "I think she saved him," she whispered. The family dropped their petition quietly, and Hillridge became home. That spring, a massive thunderstorm swept through Hillridge. Power went out. Streets flooded. Maria's home shook under the howling winds. She rushed to the nursery. Noel was fine but scared, crying. Luma leapt onto the bed, nuzzled him, and licked his cheeks until the cries faded into hiccups. She stayed there all night, eyes wide, body still, a sentinel against thunder. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Noel took his first steps while holding onto Luma's fur. His first word wasn't mama or dada. It was Lu. She was there when he skinned his knee, when he met his kindergarten teacher, when he threw his first tantrum. She was patient, gentle, immovable. Children at school asked if he brought his dog everywhere. He did. At 7, he told his class, "She's my real mom." Maria didn't even correct him, because in some way, he wasn't wrong. One night, years later, Maria opened her door to a young woman in her 20s, shivering. She held a folded piece of paper. I, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to say thank you. She handed Maria the paper and walked away. Inside, under the soft kitchen light, Maria unfolded the letter. I was broken. I thought I had nothing left. But I prayed. I asked, if anyone was out there, please save him. I didn't know it would be a dog, but thank you for loving him when I couldn't. No signature, but Maria knew. Some wounds never fully close. Some acts, though, can soften the edge of sorrow. Luma was slowing down. At 13, her steps were stiff, her hearing dulled, but she still rose each morning to watch Noel walk to the school bus. One day she didn't. Noel, now 12, curled up beside her on the rug. She licked his face one last time, then rested her head on his knee and was gone. They buried her beneath the oak in the backyard, where she and Noel had shared 10 years of sunrises and secrets. Maria carved a plaque, Luma, the one who stayed. That night, Noel sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Good night, Mom." One star seemed to blink. Years later, when Noel was 17, he took a part-time job at the Hillridge Public Library, mostly shelving books and digitizing records. He liked the quiet. It reminded him of Luma, calm, trusting, present. One rainy afternoon in the library basement, he found a stack of boxes marked Town Records, MISC. He wasn't sure why he opened the one marked Family Legacy, but inside was a yellowed folder labeled simply Miracle Dog, Winter Case 2014. He froze. Inside was everything: police reports, witness statements, Maria's emergency foster license, photos, dozens of them. The first one was grainy, printed from a body cam. Luma wrapped around a howling infant, eyes alert, snow around her muzzle. Taped to the back was a quote from the first officer on scene. She looked at me like she dared me to take one step closer without gloves on, like she knew she had more right to that kid than anyone alive. Noel found it in Maria's desk drawer a few weeks later, the original court ruling, tucked in a frame behind his childhood drawing of Luma. He read it twice. While the legal system does not recognize a canine as a guardian, this court recognizes the power of sacrifice, choice, and compassion. Let it be entered that in the matter of Noel Devlin, abandoned, endangered, and saved, the presence of one German shepherd changed the fate of a child. Noel put it back carefully, hands trembling. He'd always known his story was strange. Now he knew it was sacred. On the day he turned 18, Noel received a letter from the state university. Congratulations, Noel Alvarez. You've been awarded the Rachel Devlin Memorial Scholarship for Excellence in Animal Sciences. It took him several minutes to process the name. Rachel, his biological mother, a woman he'd never known, a ghost who had disappeared into addiction and shadows. But someone had built a scholarship in her name, anonymously. He later found out it was funded by her estranged sister, now a grief counselor. He wrote a letter back. I forgive her every day. 10 years after Luma's passing, Noel returned to Hillridge for a community animal rescue fundraiser. Now 22, he had long legs, a quiet voice, and the kind of presence that made children stop and listen. He took the stage at dusk, holding the microphone with steady hands. I was left behind once, he said, but someone found me, not someone you'd expect. She didn't speak. She didn't call for help. She just laid there between me and death and stayed. He paused. She was a dog. Her name was Luma, and everything good in my life began because she chose not to walk away. People wiped their eyes, and a few applauded. Most stood in silence, because what do you say to a story like that? Noel opened a small center years later, the Luma Project, a nonprofit that trains service dogs for abandoned children, abuse survivors, and war veterans with PTSD. The logo? A silhouette of a dog curled protectively around a child. It became a national symbol, and in every training manual, there was a page titled The One Who Stayed. Maria passed away in her 70s, peacefully in her sleep. Noel found her journals months later. One entry read, I used to believe miracles came from heaven. Then I found one in a ditch, wrapped in fur and frost. Noel scattered her ashes beneath the same oak tree where Luma rested. He built a stone bench beside it with an engraving that read, "Here they lie, the woman who believed and the dog who never stopped." Each year on Christmas Eve, Noel returned. He lit a single lantern under the tree, and as snow fell silently around him, he looked to the sky. One star always blinked twice. He smiled. She was watching. She always had been. It was just after midnight when Noel's phone buzzed. He was in his college dorm studying for finals, sipping on cold coffee. Unknown number. He almost let it ring, but something inside said, "Pick up." "Hello?" A gravelly voice replied. "Is this Noel Alvarez?" "Yes. You don't know me, but I was the EMT that drove you and the dog to Hillridge General. I've thought about that night every single year since." Noel sat upright. "You were just a baby. I don't know if you remember it, but that dog, she didn't blink, didn't bark, just watched us like she'd rip our throats out if we failed." Noel smiled. "That sounds like her. I thought you should know something. That night changed me. I left EMS a year later, became a veterinarian." There was a pause, and every time I save one now, I think of Luma. At 25, Noel bought a house with a fenced-in backyard. Not big, not flashy, but warm, a home for a life built on warmth. He adopted a rescue, a half-blind, three-legged mutt named Whiskey. People asked him, why not a purebred or a pup? Noel would just smile. "She reminds me of my mother." Whiskey followed him everywhere, slept curled against his side, and when thunder rolled in, she did what Luma used to do, press her body close and stay. Noel got his first tattoo the day he turned 30. On his left shoulder, a line drawing of a German shepherd curled in a circle around a tiny star. It wasn't flashy, but when he walked into schools to speak to kids about trauma, about healing, about never giving up, he rolled up his sleeve and told them the story. One teacher once asked, "Do you think the dog knew what she was doing?" Noel paused. "I think she knew exactly what she was doing. I think she saved me, not just from the cold, but from the belief that I was unwanted." On the 20th anniversary of the day he was found, Noel stood at the edge of the same ditch where it all began. Snow blanketed the ground. He didn't come alone. Dozens had followed him, survivors of abuse, children raised in foster care, service dog handlers, news crews. He walked to the exact spot, now marked by a small stone engraved with Luma's name, and crouched. "I was supposed to die here," he said into the mic, "but I didn't, because of a creature most people would have overlooked, a stray dot." He looked at the crowd. "We can't always save the world, but we can choose to stay. We can choose not to walk away." Tears streamed down more faces than he could count, and in that moment, a single snowflake landed on his hand and melted instantly. Noel published a memoir 2 years later, The One Who Stayed, A Dog, a Ditch, and a Second Chance at Life. It hit #1 on the bestseller list. But it wasn't the fame that mattered. It was the letter he received in an envelope with no return address. "I read your story in a shelter. I was 16. I was going to give up. I didn't. I adopted a dog instead. Her name is Hope. We're both still here. Thank you." Noel framed it beside the only photo he still had of that night. A dog, a baby, and a miracle. Noel was 33 when the knock came. He lived alone now in a quiet cabin near the edge of a forest preserve, where he trained dogs and wrote occasionally. It was raining. The woman on the porch looked to be in her late 40s, slim, pale freckles, eyes so strikingly familiar he didn't speak at first. "You don't know me," she said, "but I'm your aunt." He blinked. "Rachel's sister?" She nodded. "I didn't know about you until years later. I was in rehab when it happened." She handed him a box. Inside were old photos, Rachel as a girl, with a dog, a German shepherd. "She loved them," the woman whispered. "I think that's why, when she prayed, it was a dog that answered." Noel didn't cry, but he invited her in. Over the next few weeks, Noel and his aunt sat on the porch many nights, sifting through what could have beens and fragments of memories. He asked her once, "Did she regret it?" She said nothing for a long time, then pulled a bundle of letters from her coat. She wrote these to you, never mailed them. He read them slowly over days, words scrawled in pain, guilt, hope. One ended with, I hope whoever finds you holds you like I never could. That summer, Noel planted a second oak beside Luma's tree. He called it Rachel's tree. I've got two mothers, he'd say when visitors came. One who gave me life, one who saved it. The roots eventually tangled beneath the earth, just like their stories. Years later, a girl knocked on the door of the Luma Project's rescue center. 12 years old, quiet, shivering, clutching a bruised arm. I heard you help people who get left behind. Noel took her hand. They gave her a foster pup, tiny, nervous, floppy-eared. She named it Star. When they reunited a year later for adoption finalization, she told him, Star stayed, just like yours did. On the 30th anniversary of that frozen night, Noel walked again to the ditch. It was quiet now, the roads busier, the town louder. But in that spot, stillness. He knelt, left a small stone. This is where I was born twice. The wind picked up, and faintly it sounded like a distant bark.